So Escape from Tarkov just had a new wipe. For those who don't know, this is because it is technically still in beta. So when a new build happens, all progress is wiped, reset, and players start again. And as I start this new wipe, I want to talk a bit about some of the controversial changes and tests they did during the last one, and why a lot of players are concerned about the future of the game. Hello and welcome to Alternate Image Gaming. This is Tarkov Talks, a show where we discuss gaming with Tarkov in the background. Normally the topics aren't EFT, but today it is, because again it's basically like a new season just started for the game. One of the main biggest changes they did towards the end of the previous wipe, heading into this one, is reducing the amount of stuff that can be dropped in raid for other players. Normally you could come in and bring almost anything from your stash to the raid and share that with others, with your friends, or in the worst case scenario, with people buying your stuff with real money. Now the goal for this was to fight real money transactions and hopefully the hackers that supply those. So what they did is now you can't drop barter items, which are valuable for quest progress, rare keys, other expensive items, or just straight up loads of cash. The intent here is to make sure that if there's not as much good stuff that you can get from other players, that you don't have the incentive of trying to buy that stuff from these potentially cheating people. The downside for this is it means that the people trying to sell their skills, or in this case their hacks, for actual cash, are going to find other ways to do it. That means they can't just go farm up loot and hand it over. They have to actually do full carries, which means these cheaters are going to be in with somebody paying for their support, and they're going to be killing you and your squad to take your stuff to give to that person and help them complete their quests. Is this actually better? It's really tough to say. I can't really see it actually dropping out the amount of cheaters or the amount of RMT, because the people who want to buy still exist and the people who want to sell still exist, and they're just going to come around and do it. Now what this does do, however, is make it much more difficult to share stuff with your friends. You can't just come in, give the key to them so they can do the task, come and drop the item so they can work on their hideout back at their stash. It just kind of slows down the game. Really, though, not a huge problem for anybody. Unfortunately, also not a huge problem for the people it's trying to stop. Now, while that change is the biggest functional change that's happening, and for the most part, people are generally happy with it because they think, wrongly though, but they think that it'll help stop the cheaters and the RMT in the game. The part that was really controversial, the part that caused a lot of problems, is when they took away all of the traders and the flea, which for those who don't know are the auction house, and all the way of buying and selling basically everything in the game, for 5 days. And had this kind of, it would have been a neat idea, this sort of role play. A new boss was coming onto the scene and was taking out the other traders and the other bosses, so that you couldn't use them, and then ransomed it out so that you had to actually pay a bunch of money as the players to the game, money being in-game currency, not real money, to get that back. Now there's two main problems with this. The first is when Nikita, the creator of Battlestate Games and Tarkov, made a tweet saying, "I will take away your traders and your flea if I get so many likes on Twitter." Now later he came out and said, no, this wasn't for that, it was planned the whole time. But honestly, I don't believe him, and so many people don't either. It seemed like something that you said only after the outrage happened, that people weren't enjoying the game because they couldn't get the gear and the stuff they were used to getting. It ruined the flow of the game. People got upset, and then he came out and I believe probably was not terribly honest about the event happening then. Particularly given that everybody thought that the new wipe, or at least the new Lighthouse expansion, which was tied to that boss, was going to come out at that time. However, it didn't come out at that time. It doesn't feel like it was planned at all. It probably was supposed to happen right before this wipe did. But he did it early and did it in that weird timing for Twitter clout, and that doesn't feel good. That's concerning about the person helming this game and what they're willing to do for their own egos, and not because they think the game is good. Now, a lot of long-term Escape from Tarkov players are aware that the creator kind of does the things he wants to do, but it does normally feel like he does what he wants to do to make the game great, and not just because Twitter said so. Now, the other problem with that particular event, and they did another one during the actual pre-wipe thing too, of removing traders, is it really hurts the flow of the game. It makes it a lot more tedious to do every little bit that you're trying to do. Unfortunately, this is just tedium and not difficulty, which making the game more difficult, potentially good, potentially bad. Obviously, the more difficult game is going to limit the audience, but the more hardcore people would prefer it. But tedious isn't good. I personally know about a half dozen people who have quit Tarkov from that wipe have not come back to this wipe because they don't really want to invest any more time in a game that could just suddenly become incredibly tedious at the whim of the developer, particularly with the reasoning that it felt like the developer was doing it. Now, Battlestate Games has several times discussed some kind of crazy hardcore potential elements they have, not necessarily planned but had considered for the game. And whilst, again, some would be not unhappy with those changes, I think it would alienate a lot of the audience if those hardcore things just made it kind of a bother to play. Some people just want to get into their game, the stash management, the loot parts. They don't want to have to spend a bunch of time messing with it to build their kits and go. They want to play, and that makes sense. They want to get in and play the game. Having ways to allow that is definitely better, especially when taking that away possibly comes out of Twitter Club. So we're here out of this particular raid. And as I come look at the loot I'm about to get, I really hope that the developer of this game focuses on making the game good and not kind of trolling the players, trolling the audience. A little bit of that during the very pre-wipe events is fine, but long-term strategy-wise, try to focus on making this game as best as it can be. No Twitter clout changes, no unnecessarily tedious changes. We'll see how this wipe goes. I'm still having fun. Hopefully long-term strategy works out. If you've gotten this far, please like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you think about this. Future videos may have other games, but this channel will also feature some more Tarkov content later on. So, well, have a good day.